apply a lot of pressure and make sure they're in the right ball position. But I don't think there's any need to wait around, Adam. Let's jump right into this losers round 2 match and see which player is going to be able to lead out strong and try and take game 1 to keep advancing in this tournament. Caio is actually going to lead out with the Incineroar and the Porygon 2. So some good fake out pressure to potentially set up that trick room if that's what Caio wants to go for. But Julian has also got a few tricks up his sleeve with that Amoonguss and an Incineroar of his own.
The Incineroar's matching up pretty standard for a lot of teams. Get it in the lead, get a fake out down, and be able to cause some problems there. But what I think Julian's done really well here is he's brought the ultimate Trick Room deterrent in the Amoonguss. He's not even one of those players who's decided to switch it in. He puts it in front of the Porygon and says, hey, that's fine if you want a Trick Room. I'm going to have a Pokemon that can immediately flourish in the Trick Room and start sporing you before you even get the chance to move in those turns. So really plays a bit of a mind game. He can also obviously spore before the Trick Room. That's how the priority order works. The fake out could stop that from happening, and we could end up with one of those turns where we just exchange fake outs. So we'll be curious to see if any of the trainers decide to try and carve open like a little advantage and go for it there, but starting out as expected, really.
Yeah, the Incineroar on Julian's side, going to go for the fake out into the Porygon 2, going to stop any Trick Room. And Caio's Incineroar actually not going for fake out swaps here. It's actually just going to be straight away a U-turn. Gets the cheeky critical hit for additional damage and allows Caio the opportunity to change up his ball position. But you do have to be wary about that Amoonguss coming in. Actually, Ferrothorn as Pokemon doesn't have to worry too much about those spores. But the Amoonguss has actually targeted down that Porygon 2, going for the double target. And Julian really trying to show that he actually does not want this Trick Room going up at all. Going for the fake out and the spore does enable him to stop that.
That's a really good trade-off to make. Just say, you know what, you can deal some damage to me, you can land the U-turn on me, that's fine, but now your Trick Room setter next to one of your best Trick Room kind of Pokemon that flourishes in that situation isn't able to get Trick Room up, so he's forced to switch it out. The Incineroar coming in is going to help out with that Intimidate, but really nice positioning, as you mentioned. Amoonguss can't really do that much to the Ferrothorn. It can't put it to sleep because of the typing, but you know, it can try and kind of buy time and force some awkward positions out of Caio. So a lot of switching going on this turn. And Dragapult coming in when there's no Trick Room in, really key.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're Julian, you know you have the offensive pressure here. You can see it going off here with the Burning Jealousy into that Ferrothorn, but critically the Ferrothorn there had the Ochre Berry, I believe it was. Yes, it was. So reducing the attack that the damage that the fire type move could go there, as the Ferrothorn actually goes for a curse. Now this is a set I have not seen in a long time, lowering the speed but boosting up the attack and the defense of that Ferrothorn going into this next turn, and that will certainly help it out against the opposing Dragapult. But without the Ochre Berry, those Burning Jealousies are still going to be dealing a chunk of damage.
Those Burning Jealousies are going to add up, and of course the Burning Jealousy does have some extra effects that may be interesting if we ever end up in a position where Julian can get those. We'll talk about those more if they turn up. I do like that the Dragapult's coming in though and just immediately saying, well, one of your best things to do now is to try and buy time to get that Porygon to wake up. I think the Incineroar's coming in. He gets the Dragapult in. There's no Trick Room in play, and it could be one of these turns where really he just starts to put down huge amounts of damage with it, and that's something that Dragapult's been so good for doing throughout all of VGC 2020 since we moved to Sword and Shield.
It certainly has, and this is something as well we talked about a lot in today's broadcast, is that Dynamax Dragapult, and Julian has been able to execute that out onto the field here, matching a Dynamax on Caio's side of the field. So Julian being able to apply a lot of pressure with something like a Max Wormwood or a Max Phantasm, and Caio going to Dynamax actually up that Ferrothorn, and I really like this because you've got the attack boost and the defense boost, and now the Ferrothorn can put himself in a position to go for those Max Steel Spike, start boosting up the defense even further for his partner Pokemon. Dragapult, however, going to go for the Max Phantasm straight into that slot, deals a decent amount of damage there, but crucially will now bring that Ferrothorn back down to neutral as well, lowering the defense stat, as well as obviously lowering the defense on that opposing Incineroar as well. Reveals itself to have that Life Orb, no surprises there, as Incineroar follows up with the Flare Blitz, still does a really big chunk of damage, but critically not enough to pick up the KO against that Ferrothorn. You know, the Ferrothorn really sort of showing that Dynamax is going to be able to help it have that longevity. Stomping Tantrum coming out from the Incineroar on Caio's side is going to be... Oh! I was about to say it's going to be enough to pick up the KO, but Incineroar hanging on by 1 HP as Max Steel Spike comes out, going to go straight into that Dragapult. Does do so much damage because, of course, the attack was still up there on that Ferrothorn. So a really interesting turn of events in this particular game. A few moves I didn't expect to see, particularly Stomping Tantrum from Incineroar.
That's something that's a little bit different, and it brings the Incineroar on Julian's side very, very low. That said, I mean, he got a lot of damage down on this Ferrothorn, which looks to be the focal point of Caio's team, right? Another one for the bingo card. Ferrothorn Dynamaxing is not something that has been particularly common yet, and I think it's really good. I think it truly provides something different, especially once you get that curse up as well. It's going to draw a lot of attention and very wisely divert that attention with the Max Guard. So a lot of smart decisions here, but it looks like Julian's making some really good targeting decisions himself.
Yeah, Julian, knowing Max Guard was likely coming out from that Ferrothorn, goes for the Max Whirlwind into the Incineroar and starts lowering some of the attack stats on the opposing side of the field. Incineroar, of course, going for the Flare Blitz, and that's really smart. You cover for the fact that the Ferrothorn maybe didn't go for that Max Guard, you'd easily be able to pick up the KO. Caio's Incineroar, though, however, going to be able to KO the Incineroar on Julian's side with that U-turn. And again, that sort of play that you see a lot with Incineroar, where it leaves the field and comes back in, does just allow Caio to be able to bring it back in later on in the game and bring his Togekiss out on the field. We've now seen all 4 Pokemon from him. This
Togekiss is actually pretty interesting because it does, of course, have access to redirection, and it's something we talk about a lot with protecting your Dynamax. And Ferrothorn obviously wouldn't be able to take many other attacks from something like the Dragapult. You've got to be careful throwing out a Max Whirlwind when you've got a Togekiss in play. You kind of have to mix up your strategy a little bit there. But Julian kind of is able to respond to that very, very, very quickly by the fact he has his Toxtricity available. Toxtricity with Overdrive, the spread move, just really ignores that redirection. So something that comes all the way from really good team building is, hey, I've got a Pokemon at all times who can spread some damage around. And I think that's really smart of him to bring it in here in place of the Incineroar. So that works out kind of well for Julian, right? That he's able to bring that in at the perfect time.
Yeah, I really like this. Togekiss, of course, going for the Follow Me, and this makes sense as, the Dragapult going to be faster. It can take away that Max move. Actually going to be the Max Steel Spike, which is really interesting. Procking that Berry Berry on the Togekiss, so it's still slightly less damage. Should be able to survive this easily there, just doing over 50% thanks to the health of its berry. But it's one of those moves, having Steel Wing on your Dragapult, that's kind of risen in popularity throughout this tournament. It's not something we really saw previously on Dragapult. You can see it going down into the right there as Toxtricity goes for that Overdrive that you mentioned down and manages to secure the KO on that Togekiss. But even with the choice specs, it is not enough to pick up the KO against that Dynamax Ferrothorn. So it will be able to go with a Max Steel Spike, going to target down into that Dragapult, will be able to pick up the KO. I think at this stage, though, with the dwindled HP that the Ferrothorn has got, the defense boosts really aren't going to matter too much. It should be easy enough for Julian to be able to pick up a KO, and unfortunately as well for Caio, there's no partner Pokemon now. Togekiss got KO'd to reap the benefits of that defense boost.
No, I mean, if there's body press available, then, this Ferrothorn would be absolutely quids in and would be able to start dealing huge damage. But the Steel Spikes have been good. They've, over a couple of turns picked up a knockout on Dragapult. That's really key. And now it's just Amoonguss versus, Amoonguss does have a lot of work to do here. Being able to sit there and keep the pressure off the Toxtricity is going to be absolutely key. And I think this Toxtricity may be able to just kind of clutch it out on his own, right? I mean, the remaining Pokemon for Caio is that Porygon 2, which is asleep. So if this Toxtricity is given a couple turns to just throw attacks into it, it's really going to be able to start looking for knockouts. That said, I mean, if things wake up or these turns are played out incorrectly by Julian, it could be dicey. But if this Overdrive keeps landing, which it's now locked into with the choice specs, this is an easy double knockout for the Toxtricity.
It certainly is, but you do have to worry about potential fake out from that Incineroar. As your choice specs, you're not going to be able to protect on this occasion. So Julian could always go for a switch up, but no, keeps it on the field. Fake out does go into that Toxtricity as Amoonguss goes for Pollen Puff, goes straight into that Ferrothorn, actually saying, Toxtricity, don't worry if you get faked out. I've got your back. I'm going to pick up a KO against that Ferrothorn. Really bringing, like you mentioned, that Toxtricity into a position where it can go for that Overdrive, pick up a KO against the opposing Incineroar and keep dealing damage to this Porygon 2. And at the end of the day, if Porygon 2 wakes up, Amoonguss is still there hanging out on the field. It's going to be able to put it right back to sleep again.
Yeah, this Porygon 2 is going to be given very limited options to deal with kind of the Pokemon on Julian's side. And most importantly, one of the best ways to deal with this Toxtricity would be something like the Stomping Tantrum from this Incineroar. But because of how low it is from earlier in the game, an Overdrive's easily going to be able to pick this up. So we get to see exactly how much it does to this Porygon 2 now. Incineroar is felt. It doesn't bring Porygon 2.5 yet, So it's going to be a couple turns for it to be able to try and play the game. But those turns, he's got to be dealing big damage. And even though Toxtricity is exceptionally frail, it can take an Ice Beam.
Yeah, it certainly can. And Pollen Puff just doing a little bit there to bring it down under 50%. But as much as we were sort of championing Porygon 2 earlier in today's broadcast about it actually being an offensive threat, it looks like a little bit too much for Porygon 2 to be able to deal with here. Toxtricity, particularly with his Choice Specs, dealing out so much damage. And, single target attacks now as well are just going to be able to deal so much. And Amoonguss is going to be able to help out as well, particularly going for this Rage Powder, just going to protect that Toxtricity from potentially even getting frozen by something like the Ice Beam. That would definitely not be ideal for Julian. But here we go. The Overdrive actually bringing it down, I think, probably onto only 1 HP there as the Ice Beam comes out from that Porygon 2. Amoonguss safely going to be able to take that and basically seals up the win condition here for Julian, who's going to be able to take game 1. Yeah,
no way out now for this Porygon 2. I mean, being put to sleep, not getting the Trick Room, really problematic. A Rage Powder just to make sure is Toxtricity actually picking up a good number of knockouts there. I mean, it's a Pokemon that's its job, right, is to sit on the field and start taking knockouts. So really key point for Julian to be able to play around that Toxtricity and get himself in a late game position that allowed it to flourish. And the amount of damage he had down on other Pokemon, the fact the Incineroar was low, he was against a Togekiss, really good position for him there. And I'd be curious to see if he leans on it in game 2 again.
Yeah, I certainly love seeing the use of the Toxtricity there, and I think it's interesting as well. Toxtricity, it has a Gigantamax form, and we've seen that previously be a great option, particularly with G-Max Stun Shock. It can be really problematic for the opponent if you get the rolls the right way that you need them. But with the Choice Specs, and to be honest, with any choiced items, when you put them on a Pokemon, you don't want to Dynamax them because you use the utility of that item, the null and void once it goes into the Dynamax. So actually preserving his Toxtricity, using the Dynamax on the Dragapult instead, and allowing Toxtricity to come in at the end, still utilize the full benefits of those Choice Specs, really was expert play from him.
I think there's some really cool kind of choices on where you Dynamax Pokemon, and I think there's a number of Pokemon that flourish actually without Dynamaxing, and let kind of partners do the work. I think Dragapult's a Pokemon that obviously does so well while Dynamaxing. We'll head into game 2, we'll see if the game plans are the same. We obviously saw Ferrothorn Dynamaxing in that one, which was certainly a little bit different, but it definitely worked with the strategy. He was just a little bit kind of behind, and there's only so much you can do to deal with Flare Blitzes, right?
Exactly. The Ferrothorn, it can boost up all at once, but if it doesn't have the right amount of boost, Flare Blitz is still going to be able to deal a lot of damage. And speaking of potential Flare Blitzes, we've got 2 Incineroar on the field, but Caio has partnered his up with the Dragapult, and Julian has partnered up with that Amoonguss.
I like it. I think it's a good adaptation from Caio. I think kind of coming into it and saying, you know what, didn't really work the last time trying to set up the Trick Room, I just got put to sleep. Doesn't even want to opt into playing a different fake out game or anything like that. Just says, you know what, I'm not going to try that yet. But what I will let you do is bring the Amoonguss again, and then I'll be able to try and deal huge damage to it and potentially even knock it out, right? Something that's been really key in trainers kind of doing this. So if he can get the Amoonguss, he could be in a better position. It looks like Julian's going to be playing very, very cautiously around it, kind of accepting that he wants to be smart about it. Doesn't want to get caught with it in too early, and wants it to be there if there is a late game Trick Room setup coming. We saw the Ferrothorn, we knew that it was kind of a big win condition for him there, so a lot of interesting options.
Well, the Incineroar's not protecting in this particular turn, instead going for a parting shot on Julian's side into Caio's one, so going to be switching on the board position here. No fake outs as well, interestingly enough, but protects, of course, from the Dragapult and the Amoonguss, 2 Pokemon that are really pivotal to both of these players. They need to be able to preserve them, and you don't want to be taking any unnecessary damage or even a potential Spore from that Amoonguss if you can avoid it. Actually, Julian is going to bring in his own Dragapult here as Flare Blitz comes out from Caio's Incineroar. Knowing that Amoonguss caused him so much trouble in Game 1, you don't want to be going for any Spores, you don't want to have that redirection on the field. So I think that was actually a nice play by Caio to be able to not go for that fake out and go straight on the offensive, but equally a nice read there by Julian, going for the protect and just playing it safe.
Keeping your Amoonguss around is key to playing Amoonguss, right? It's got so many good tools to do that with Regenerator when it switches out, and if you can get it to take limited damage, you're probably feeling pretty good. I like both trainers having their Dragapults. I kind of think that whoever plays their Dragapult better could just win this, and that's going to be really key. I think Dragapult with Amoonguss is obviously a really nice partnership. Having redirection to deal with that, to deal with an opposing Dragapult as well is really cool. It looks like Dynamax is coming through pretty early on in this game, turn number 2. This could carve open a really good advantage for one of the players if they maybe even move first or just play the turn out like fractionally better. I think even a fraction better play will give you a huge advantage after this turn.
I mean, we've been keeping score of the slightly unique Dynamax Pokemon that have been in this game, but Dragapult's definitely not one of them. And I think it's interesting in this game too that game 1 was super defensive. You know, we had a little bit of ball position rearranging, we had some protects, whereas the moment you turn into this turn 2, both these Dragapults click that Dynamax button and both players go straight on the offensive. You know, Dynamax Dragapult can deal out so much damage and so much additional pressure with the drops that it's capable of dishing out against the opposing Pokemon. Amoonguss, however, going to go for the Rage Powder, wants to protect Julian's Dragapult from taking any of this unnecessary damage. But the Dragapult on Julian's side is actually going to go faster here. Going to go straight in for that Max Airstream into the opposing Dragapult. Deals a little bit of damage, something like a Max Whirlwind would have obviously been a lot more in terms of damage, but I think critically getting that speed advantage up and making sure that you are constantly the fastest Dragapult here is critical for him. Caio's Dragapult, however, also going to go for that Max Airstream, proccing the Cobra Berry there on the Amoonguss. So Amoonguss is going to be able to take this really well, only does about a third of damage.
That's a really, really bulky Amoonguss. I mean, yes, the Cobra Berry was there, but it, you know, was just helping out. Would have been able to take that anyway. It does get followed up on the Flare Blitz, though. That Rage Powder kind of making it the center of attention, meaning it is going to take a lot of damage. But interestingly, you know, Julian knows now that, hey, I've got the kind of earlier move on my Dragapult, so he's got to be feeling pretty good. I like that they force each other into this really weird situation where like neither of them want to miss out on the Airstream, so they both have to use what could be considered like a suboptimal move. Not as much damage, no same type attack bonus, but they can't dare to fall behind in this kind of constant one-upsmanship of the Max Airstream. So it's really weird. Of course, Max Airstream's a lot better into an Amoonguss than it is in something like an Incineroar, and so that's kind of, I think, the silver lining for Caio there is at least he's getting huge damage down, and that Amoonguss, yeah, is going to be forced to leave. There's no way it can take another combination Airstream Flare Blitz.
I mean, I just love this Amoonguss. You commented that it was really bulky after the Airstream, but then to survive the follow-up Flare Blitz as well is just phenomenal. But it's good that it's jumping out there, going to regenerate some health with its Regenerator ability and allow the Dragapult to just finish off the opposing Dragapult with that Max Phantasm. So going to be able to pick up the KO and also critically lower the defense of that opposing Incineroar, and that will help out as Julian's also brought his own Incineroar onto the field. Yes, it's not the most offensive opponent to an opposing Incineroar, but every little bit of damage can help, as we've seen so many times before where it all just stacks up. The opposing Incineroar, though, going to go for that Flare Blitz from Caio's side. As you can see, really not dealing too much damage to the Incineroar that switched in. So a great play there by Julian. He's managed to bring his Incineroar on for free. He now has the fake out pressure going into the next turn. Caio has also lost his Dynamax Pokemon, and the Amoonguss is getting a little bit of HP regeneration in the back.
Yeah, the Amoonguss is going to be a little bit healthier and probably able to play the game a little bit longer when it does come in later. That said, the Porygon 2 is in play now, a Pokemon that you usually want your Amoonguss in front of, right? But the Porygon 2 is probably not going to be allowed to do anything this turn. It's just going to have to kind of wait it out and see where it can go. This switch out of the Incineroar is certainly interesting. We get to now see the final Pokemon on Caio's team. He is back to the Ferrothorn. It's not going to be able to Dynamax this time, so not as exciting as game number 1 from that Ferrothorn, but a lot of damage potentially coming its way from this Dragapult.
Yeah, that does so much damage, and we've touched on previously how Ferrothorn, you need to be able to do as much damage as possible to it at the optimal times, so that it can't be in a position where it has that longevity on the field. Getting that defense boost as well is going to be critical going forward. You know, Caio will potentially have to be switching out his Pokemon in order to reset that drop. You know, the Incineroar and the Dragapult here, both physical attackers, and Ferrothorn at such low HP really can't afford to take any unnecessary damage. It's the same for that Porygon 2 as well. It's so bulky, you need to lower its defenses somehow.
Getting through those defenses on Porygon 2 is always going to be a nightmare, and I think a lot of players are now Porygon 2 is back at kind of the top of its game experimenting with that, and there are kind of good ways to do it with the max moves. It's something that we've not had access to in previous formats where Porygon 2 has been available, so it's a cool adaptation, and I love the way players think about, okay, well, what max move gives me the best chance, not just for this turn, but for the rest of the game as well. The Porygon 2 forced to leave. Incineroar trying to get down as many Intimidates as possible here, I imagine, to help out against this Incineroar. The problem is, Clear Body on Dragapult means, hey, it's still going to be dealing full damage.
Exactly, clear body, really working well for Dragapult here. The little Dreepy's getting in on the action though once again. Gonna go for some double target here. Not enough to pick up the KO on that Ferrothorn as the second Dreepy of course goes straight into that Incineroar. As the Incineroar on Julian's side is gonna go for that Flare Blitz though. Targeting down into the opposing Incineroar though, so not actually gonna be able to pick up the KO against this Ferrothorn at the end of this turn. So Ferrothorn is free to go for that Gyro Ball. Gonna target down into Incineroar, not dealing very much damage at all. But once again, just dealing these little bits of chip and you know, Julian was in a position where he allowed that Ferrothorn to get off another move.
The problem is that move was Gyro Ball, and that's not going to kind of extend the length of the game anymore, right? That's what he really needs to do with this Ferrothorn, and it's so low. Another Dragon Darts is going to be able to pick it up. The Ferrothorn is, you know, really a sitting duck, and you can't even look to the Incineroar to say, hey, stop this from happening to me, fake out the Dragapult because of the Ghost typing. So Dragapult's Dragon Darts here could just make this a really easy endgame for Julian. I mean, there's the Ferrothorn knocked out. We'll see if it's enough on the Incineroar as well.
Yeah, the Incineroar actually does fall victim to the second Dreepy. So Dragapult and its pre-evolutions there really trying to get some big KOs there against both of Caio's Pokemon. And again, it just puts Julian in a position where he's just got so much offensive pressure and he's really in the driving seat here. Caio's got, you know, his Pokemon depleted. You've got the Porygon 2 coming in, and yes, Porygon 2 is a great Pokemon, but it doesn't even get the special attack boost from the download, and it's got to face down against all 4 Pokemon of Julian's side, and that's definitely something that Porygon 2 is going to struggle with. So I think from Julian's perspective, he has just consistently applied so much pressure throughout this game. You know, he's been able to consistently pick up the KOs, consistently apply so much offensive pressure, and Dragapult here going to follow up with a Dragon Dart here, going to go straight into the Porygon 2 and take it down to almost 50%.
Porygon 2 is not going to be able to clutch this one out, not going to be able to fire back enough to keep on going. And Julian just slowly wearing it down. Just, you know, whatever he has to do. There's the burn. That's going to speed it up a little bit. Of course, the Porygon 2 is going to try. There's the Ice Beam. Caio doesn't want to give this one up. The Dragapult not quite knocked out.
Oh, just able to hang on 1 HP. You know, Porygon 2 really just trying to do so much here for Caio. Just trying to maybe learn a few damage rolls that are going on there as well. So things that, you know, he can just try and fight through. But Julian really being able to take such a commanding victory here. And phenomenal play from him. He's able to stay and advance through this competition.
So many good things going on there in Julian's team. I think the team composition was executed flawlessly in a couple of different ways in both games. I think there was some